As a first step to earn back your trust, I'll be reversing the changes we made and won't make any changes to the Greenbelt in the future.
Let's get real, because it never should have taken a series of scandals from this government for the Premier to undo the damage that he's done.
I think the Premier, if you listen to him, I don't think he saw the light, but he felt the heat because it was getting closer to him.
All right, Premier Doug Ford announces a reversal of that controversial Greenbelt land swap decision, backing down on the decision that has cost him a string of controversies, including the resignations of 2 cabinet ministers and 1 ministerial chief of staff, and a lengthy investigation by the Provincial Integrity Commissioner that raised ethics violation questions over his own daughter's wedding. Now he's apologizing. But what does this mean for his future and for the 1.5 million homes he pledged to build over the next 10 years? Well, for more analysis on that, we've got Rob Benzie, the Queen's Park Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star, and Sabrina Nanji, a journalist and founder at the Queen's Park Observer, and her dog has now joined us on the couch behind us. Okay, Rob, I want to start with you. The San Francisco 49ers have a big Thursday night football game tonight that I'm going to watch, and I couldn't help but, when I was watching the Premier, think he was backpedaling like a cornerback, because that was quite the reversal today. What do you make of this?
It's huge, and I actually picked the Niners tonight, David. So I hope they win and cover. But yeah, it was a huge backpedal. Yeah, and he was like a cornerback, but he was getting sacked, if we can belabor the football analogies. And he was, not quite Aaron Rodgers hobbled, but he was certainly in trouble. His polling is bad. We know the public polling, because Abacus Data does a monthly tracking poll that the Star publishes, and we've seen him go from 41% in July to 38% in August to 34% in September. And David, Mr. Ford is a huge student of polling. He pores over the polls. I sometimes bump into him in the hallway at Queen's Park, and he'll ask me about a poll, and have you seen this? Have you heard this? Not necessarily political polling. He's just very interested in public opinion because he's a populist, and he wants to do what the people want him to do. That's why he was reelected last year. He did what they wanted him to do during the pandemic, and largely, and was rewarded with an even bigger majority. The public doesn't want him to do the Greenbelt. Abacus found 83% of Ontarians are aware of the story, and they have negative feelings about it. So this has been a problem for the Premier since they announced this land swap opening up the Greenbelt last November, and it's caused him nothing but aggro this summer. We had these 2 reports from the Auditor General and the Integrity Commissioner that were very, very critical of the process, his government, and we've seen now 2 cabinet ministers forced to quit, and a chief of staff, and then today another aide in Ford's office resigned, his housing policy advisor. So this has just been there's been a lot of collateral damage.
Sabrina, this has been incredible to watch from Ottawa and not be at Queen's Park, as you both are. But they were sticking with this even after the first ministerial resignation, even after the first staffer resignation. Was it just the massages and the mani-pedi that made this untenable? Like what changed from then to now? Is it just the polling, or what do you think?
Yeah, I just want to start off by saying that my dog Argo has left the couch here. He's named for the Toronto Argonauts. I'm not sure what kind of omen that is, but he's had enough. But I think that's a great question, David. What has changed? I mean, it was interesting to me that the Premier made this stunning flip-flop in Niagara, where his PCs are having a caucus retreat. He was flanked by his front bench, but behind the scenes, Tory MPPs have been telling him that they've been hearing from their constituents that they're not happy about this. And they've even been confiding to me, and I know other reporters like Benzie as well. So I think the Premier had seen the writing on the wall here, still a stunning reversal. The polling has been in the dumps all summer, and this isn't over yet. I mean, the Integrity Commissioner had another report today that seemed to raise more questions than answers, pointing out that the PC's fundraiser Tony Miele had sold tickets to the Premier's daughter's Stag and Doe. The RCMP is still sniffing around. It remains to be seen whether that becomes a full-on investigation. The Integrity Commissioner has uncovered a lot of stones here, raised a lot of questions about illegal lobbying. So I still don't think that this is a done deal. And now that the Premier has gone and, backtracked on this move, there are going to be a lot of developers who stood to gain over $8 billion here that are not going to be happy about this. And so there's a lot of questions as to whether Ontario taxpayers are going to be on the hook for this decision. So, it seemed inevitable, but still, I don't think this headache is over for the Ford government by a long shot.
Right, and Sabrina, just to correct me if I'm wrong on this, not only that the head of the Ontario Fund sold tickets to the Stag and Doe, but some of those tickets got sold to developers whose land was later part of this Greenbelt swap and stood to make massive profits. I'm right on that, right?
You're right. I mean, the Integrity Commissioners seem to say that there was really nothing wrong with that. Part of that is because of the laws and his mandate and what he can investigate. I mean, the rule about politicians accepting gifts doesn't apply to family members. It's a really high bar for some of these complaints that came from the NDP. But yeah, you're correct in that.
Okay, so Rob, help me understand this. Like, we've got 2 cabinet ministers gone and a bunch of staff gone. The Premier's still there. And he's at the center of this, going back to the family wedding all the way through to today. And there's still an RCMP investigation or potentially into this. At what point does Doug Ford's position as Premier start to be questioned? Is there any conversation about that inside the government or at Queen's Park?
I mean, there's always jockeying to be the next leader, but none of the would-be next leaders are jockeying in a way to exploit this Greenbelt scandal. Because this is a problem for the party's brand. It's not just Mr. Ford. So I think this is one of these things where they're kind of rallying, together. I mean, they have an external threat, and that threat I guess it's the Mounties. I guess it's the opposition parties, Marit Stiles at the NDP. There'll be a new Liberal leader on December 2nd, who will inevitably get a honeymoon in the polls. So right now they are trying to galvanize together. But look, if we're talking this time next year, David, and Mr. Ford's polls are below 30%, then everyone gets a bit nervous, and then maybe he isn't running for re-election a third time in 2026. But that's a long way from now, and he is a resilient guy. We've seen that before. He has done policy reversals during the pandemic. There were some really high-profile ones, and they weathered them. And I think it's when he is at his best and most effective, as he was today, frankly, when he's being honest and saying, "Look, I messed up. And I listened to you, and here's what I'm going to do."
But Sabrina, the rhetoric of the Ford government in defending the Greenbelt decision on we need these lands to deal with the housing crisis, or people are never going to be able to get homes. How do they move ahead on housing now that the controversial centerpiece, at least rhetorically, of their plan has gone up in smoke?
Yeah, I think this is absolutely a credibility issue for the Ford government. I mean, this isn't the first time that he's had to promise he's not going to touch the Greenbelt again. I mean, we heard the now former housing minister say that, one of the reasons why he kind of wanted to, keep away from this is because he had spent 4 years saying he's not going to touch the Greenbelt. And then after they won their second majority last spring, it was, a completely different story. So I think certainly the Ford government is going to have to do some making up here, because 2026 is not that far away. I mean, certainly I think that they've got some time to recover from this drama of the Greenbelt. But if, in 2.5 years, if Marit Stiles or whoever is leading the Liberals, are standing in a big empty lot and saying, the Premier promised there would be housing here and there's no housing, I think that that's really where they could be in danger with the electorate.
Yeah, Benzie, just as a final point, do they have a plan B on housing? Because plan A didn't work out very well.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the challenge. I mean, to Sabrina's point, Ford has promised to build 1.5 million homes in a decade. That means housing starts of 150,000 on average every year. The best year they've had since 1987, 100,000 housing starts. So this is they set this high bar for themselves and this target, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to meet it. And exactly, can you imagine the next Liberal leader or Marit Stiles standing in front of a non-Greenbelt piece of land, saying, look, there were supposed to be houses here and there's none.
Well, luckily there are some reports that have been talked about in this conversation that say you didn't need the Greenbelt in the first place, and there's lots of available land, and maybe that's where it will get some action. Gang, thanks so much, Sabrina Nanji, Rob Benzie. Appreciate the time as always.